Point Park soccer is back as the school year comes back in full swing. The esports team looks to finish the month of September strong, and the volleyball team looks to keep their winning record as men and women's golf get ready for the River States Conference preview. Pittsburgh sports are heating up with the Pirate season coming to a close. The Pitt Panthers start hot at the 2-1, and the Steelers look to prove the doubters wrong and compete for an AFC North title. With the Steelers back, the rest of the NFL is in full swing too, with some of the craziest games we've seen in just the first 2 weeks. And what does the MLB playoff scene look like with just a few weeks left of the regular season? It's time to come on down to the Pioneer Sideline. Hello, and welcome to our first episode of Pioneer Sideline for the 2022 fall semester. I'm your host, Natalia Hillen. The Point Park men and women's soccer teams both had games this past weekend. Starting with the men's team, on Saturday, they played in an NAIA non-conference matchup against Madonna University at the Montour Junction Sports Complex. There was not much action during the first half of the game, except for in the last 6 minutes of the half. Madonna scored heading into the second half, making the score 1-0. In the first 6 minutes of the second half, the Crusaders took a penalty kick and were leading 2-0. With 25 minutes left in the game, Madonna made 3 more goals, making the final score 5-0. Moving on to the women's soccer team, on Saturday, they played against Spring Arbor University at the Montour Junction Sports Complex. The women's team took an unfortunate loss, with the final score being 5-0. During the first 15 minutes of the first half, the Cougars managed to score 2 goals, and they were able to score 2 more goals, making the score 4-0. As the first half came to an end, going into the second half, the Pioneers knew they needed to adjust their gameplay. For the last 45 minutes, they fought and challenged Spring Arbor to make it more difficult for them to score. The Cougars had 16 out of 25 shots on the net. Junior Ella Serlin made 10 huge saves overall. Spring Arbor ended up scoring 1 more goal, making the score 5-0. Both the men's and women's teams will be taking on Carlow University at Highmark Stadium this Thursday night. The women will be playing at 6 p.m. and the men will be on the field at 8 p.m. This upcoming Saturday, both teams will be playing Ohio Christian at Highmark Stadium. Be sure to go out and support the Point Park soccer teams. Point Park's esports team officially started up the Rocket League season on Tuesday, September 6th, and played Kansas State University. On the Point Park Sports Recap, 2 esports casters, Carson and Brett, stated in a video recap, quote, "We have a lot of exciting stuff on the way. We have Rocket League streams every Monday night at 7 p.m., end quote. Make sure to visit the Point Park Sports website to see how Rocket League did in their match this past Monday against the University of Missouri. After the break, we get an inside scoop on how the volleyball team is doing and what to expect from the men's and women's golf team leading up to conference previews.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, and welcome back to Newsnight. Most of the student body of the Pittsburgh Public Schools.
Some of the United States allies.
Thursday, the FBI was seen rating.
Let's get started with today's forecast.
Today's high will only reach about 31 degrees.
It's looking a little cooler than we've seen in the past few weeks.
All this and more.
All this and more
All this and more coming up on Newsnight.
coming up on Newsnight.
Coming up on Newsnight.
Welcome back. We now send things over to Hannah Bazet to update us on how Point Park athletics are doing. Hannah?
Thanks, Nat. The women's volleyball team played Carnegie Mellon University last Tuesday night in a special non-conference match. The Pioneers struggled throughout the start of the game, while Carnegie Mellon maintained control of the first two sets. The Pioneers pushed back from an 8-4 deficit to bring the game to 11-10. From there on, the set was back and forth, and the Pioneers were able to force a fourth set. The Pioneers maintained control throughout the fourth and pushed onward to the fifth. However, it wasn't enough, as Carnegie Mellon was able to find their groove again and sealed the victory for their school. The final score of the game was 3-2 Carnegie Mellon. The Pioneers play again tonight at 7 p.m. against Carlow University. This will be the first match of the River States Conference play, and we are wishing our Pioneers the best of luck. Moving on to golf, the Pioneers men's team played in their first invitational of the season at the Grove City Country Club on Thursday, September 15th. Junior Tyler Hillard shot an 82 to lead the team with 9 pars to tie for 13th in that category. He placed 35th out of the 89 players competing. The Pioneers had a combined team score of 345, which gave them 12th place out of the 14 teams in attendance. The men's team's next tournament will begin on Monday, September 26th at Belterra Golf Course in Florence, Indiana. This will be the RSC Fall Preview Tournament and will last 2 days. Good luck to our men's golf players. The ladies' golf team also had their season opener on September 12th at the Grove City College Invitational. The team placed second out of the 8 teams that competed and had a combined score of 376. 3 of the Lady Pioneers placed in the top 20. The leader of the group, senior Olivia Stawwovi, placed 4th, shooting an 85 for the competition and was only 8 shots away from the winner of the tournament. Seniors Megan Locke and Olivia Stawwovi, as well as freshman Julia Getz, all tied for 18th place. The team played again on Saturday, September 18th at the Westminster Invitational, where they placed 7th out of the 9 teams that competed. The girls will play again on Monday, October 3rd in the RSC Fall Preview in Florence, Indiana. We're hoping the Pioneer ladies can get their stride back and are wishing them the best of luck. That's all I have. Back to you, Nat.
Thanks, Hannah. Coming up, Pittsburgh has been busy these last few months in sports with wins and losses, and a new Steelers segment featuring Steelers fan 7 himself when we come back. Welcome back. The Pitt Panthers and Pirates have been busy as the MLB season comes to a close, and the college football season enters week 4 this week. To update us on all things locally, we send it to Mike Hodgetts. Mike?
Thanks, Nat. The Pitt Panthers went into this week's game against Western Michigan far from whole. Down a laundry list of injured starters that only grew as the game went on, they were still able to put out a convincing win over the Broncos by the score of 34-13 and move to a record of 2-1. It took until the second quarter for offensive coordinator Frank Cignetti to take the training wheels off and allow quarterback Nate Yarnell to uncork some deep balls, but by the second half, he was making key plays in the passing game for an offense which relied heavily on the run. Israel Abanakanda's career-high 203 all-purpose yards set the table for Yarnell, who had to simply make the plays that were in front of him. Yarnell played mistake-free football, tallying 179 yards through the air on 75% passing and 1 touchdown to no turnovers. He was steady for a Pitt team that was in desperate need of a stabilizing presence. Yarnell will fill in next week as well against Rhode Island while Keaton Slovis and Nick Patty rest up. Pitt owned an 8-minute advantage in time of possession and outgained Western Michigan by more than 150 total yards in the first half. They ran effectively and converted on some deep passes from Yarnell, but at halftime the Panthers held just a 7-point lead because they failed to take full advantage of scoring chances in the red zone. After 6 straight quarters of tough sledding close to the goal line, the Panthers broke through in the second half against the Broncos. They scored touchdowns on each of their last 3 red zone opportunities to help them pull away and win by 21 points. Now, on to Pirate news. The Pittsburgh Pirates organization is currently under fire for an incident that occurred with one of their players during a game against the New York Mets on Friday night. 5 weeks after Rodolfo Castro was suspended after his cell phone fell out of his pocket as he slid into third base, Key Brian Hayes is under fire for pulling sunflower seeds from his back pocket in the middle of a run-scoring play. With the Pirates and the Mets scoreless in the bottom of the third on Friday night, New York's Eduardo Escobar was on first with 1 out and Thomas Nido at the plate. With the hit and run on, Nido singled to right field. As Escobar rounded third and headed home, Hayes stood in place on the base path, holding his glove in one hand while using the other to retrieve seeds from his pocket. Todd Zeal, a Mets analyst on SNY, noticed Hayes' mid-play snack break and did not approve. Zeal mentioned the incident occurring during the play and correlated it to the fact where Pittsburgh sits during this time of the year in the sport. The Pirates currently sit at 55-93 and in last place of the NL Central Division. With less than 20 games left in the season, we will see what steps the team will take into the offseason and how they handle this situation in the coming days. As we approach the start of the NHL season, the Pittsburgh Penguins get ready for another year. On September 7th, the Penguins officially announced their training camp rosters, which featured 21 defensemen, 6 goalies, and 30 forwards. For the 17th season, the Penguins core will return as well. Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Chris Letang will all be on the roster this year after both Malkin and Letang signed new deals during the offseason. The 17 years together stands as the longest trio in NHL history. Camp is set to open on Thursday, September 22nd at the UPMC Lemieux Sports Complex. The Penguins will play a split squad scrimmage with the Columbus Blue Jackets on September 25th, with 1 squad in Columbus and 1 in Pittsburgh. The regular season opens for the Penguins on October 13th at PPG Paints Arena against the Arizona Coyotes. With all that in mind, we will now send things to John Mayer for the new Steeler Fan 7 Sideline Spotlight. John?
Thanks, Mike. The Pittsburgh Steelers fell to the New England Patriots in the home opener this past Sunday by a score of 17-14. It was a rough day offensively for both teams in this low-scoring contest. But in the end, it was Mac Jones and the Patriots offense making the key plays when they mattered most. Jones found Nelson Aguilar for a deep touchdown to close out the first half. And then it was running back Damian Harris finding the end zone, capitalizing off a Gunnar Olszewski muffed punt which set up New England inside their own 10-yard line. The Steelers' defense only gave up 17 points on the day, but the loss of reigning Defensive Player of the Year, TJ Watt, was felt significantly. A week after totaling 7 sacks and 5 takeaways in a win against the reigning AFC champions, the defense totaled 0 sacks and 1 takeaway in Week 2 without Watt, which was another interception by star safety Minkah Fitzpatrick, who continues his stellar start to the season. Minkah has gotten off to a scorching hot start so far, totaling an interception in both games, but the Steelers' offense has been ice cold, totaling only 243 yards on the day. Starting quarterback Mitch Trubisky only threw for 168 yards, and Pro Bowl rusher Najee Harris only added 49 yards on the ground. The Steelers don't have much time to recover from the loss, as the team is on a short week this week, and they will travel to Cleveland to take on the rival Browns this Thursday night in their first divisional game of the season. That's all I have in this week's Steeler Fan 7 Spotlight. Back to you, Nat.
Thanks, Mike and John. Now let's hear from Matt Palangi with an NFL recap and what the MLB playoffs may look like this October. Matt?
Thanks, Nat. Week 2 of the NFL season has just come to an end. Week 2 started off strong on Thursday Night Football when the Kansas City Chiefs played against the Los Angeles Chargers in a division rivalry game. The Chargers started off very strong with a 17-7 lead, but Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs came back with a strong drives and a big 99-yard pick six to eventually win the game to put them in first place in the AFC West and advance to 2-0. Sunday Night Football had some big games and lots of great action. The New York Jets were down 13 points with 2 minutes left and managed to score a big 66-yard touchdown, leading to an onside kick recovery and another touchdown to beat the Cleveland Browns in a shocking comeback. The Jacksonville Jaguars shut out the Indianapolis Colts 24-0, which many fans did not expect to see a team as tough as the Colts get shut out to a team like the Jaguars, who have had so many struggles in recent years. The Miami Dolphins and Baltimore Ravens had a fantastic action-packed game, with the Dolphins scoring 3 straight unanswered touchdowns late in the game to come back and win. Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa finished this game with a very impressive 469 yards and 6 touchdowns, a career high for Tua. The Arizona Cardinals had to fight hard for their victory when they started off slow, going down 20-0 at the end of the first half against Las Vegas Raiders, with 3 second-half touchdowns and 2 two-point conversions, eventually bringing this game to overtime. In overtime, the Raiders would fumble the ball, and the Cardinals defense would bring the fumble 59 yards all the way to the end zone to win this game. The week ended strong with 2 great Monday Night Football games. The Buffalo Bills put on a show, scoring 41 points and beating the Tennessee Titans 41-7, while the Philadelphia Eagles beat the Minnesota Vikings 24-7 with a great defensive performance. That is it for the NFL. Now on to the MLB. The MLB regular season is coming to an end, with many teams fighting for their spot in the playoffs. The LA Dodgers were the first team to secure a spot in the playoffs and have officially won their division. In the National League, the St. Louis Cardinals are looking to win the NL Central, while the New York Mets and the Atlanta Braves are just within 1 game of each other, fighting to win the NL East. The Philadelphia Phillies and San Diego Padres are close to making the wild card and getting their chance in the MLB postseason. In the American League, the Houston Astros have already secured their spot in the postseason, while the New York Yankees lead the AL East, with the Toronto Blue Jays and Tampa Bay Rays fighting from behind. But both of those teams are currently in the wildcard spot, hoping to keep that spot. In the AL Central, the Cleveland Guardians lead the division, with the Chicago White Sox fighting well behind 3 games. With just under 20 games left, there's still a lot of ball left to play, but many of these teams need to finish strong so that they can have a shot at the MLB World Series. That's all I have. Back to you, Nat.
Thanks, Matt. After the break, we come back with our first case of the week.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, and welcome back to Newsnight. Most of the student body of the Pittsburgh Public School.
Some of the United States allies.
Thursday, the FBI was seen rating.
Let's get started with today's forecast.
Today's high will only reach about 31 degrees.
It's looking a little cooler than we've seen in the past few weeks.
All this and more
All this and more
All this and more coming up on Newsnight.
coming up on Newsnight.
coming up on Newsnight.
Welcome back. Today we're going to be discussing our thoughts on the current Steelers quarterback situation. In these past 2 games, starter Mitchell Trubisky has not looked his best. After the close call in Week 1 against the division rival Cincinnati Bengals and a Week 2 loss against the Patriots, When will the Steelers decide to make the transition to first-round draft pick Kenny Pickett? Today, I'm joined with John, Kayla, Matt, and Mike to discuss and see what is in the store for the future. So guys, we have Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky. Mitch has been playing our last few games. We've seen some good stuff from him, but also some stuff that could be improved. And Kenny Pickett played in our preseason games. So Kayla, what do you think about the whole quarterback situation?
Well, I'm going to start off with saying Steelers fans are spoiled, and we are used to having a franchise quarterback. Ben was there my whole life. So you can't expect any quarterback to step in and fulfill that role right away. But with that being said, Matt Canada is a major issue for the offense. Sometimes it feels like he's running a D3 program. The players can only execute what the coaches tell them, and Deontay and Chase have made this known in press conferences, as well as Mitch, that they are not happy with what they're being told to do. I mean, in the game against the Patriots, there was not a single 15-yard completion over the middle. Nothing over 15. And if the play is designed, like a lot of people want to say that Mitch is bad under pressure, which is true, I won't argue that. But if the play is designed to go to Chase, that's who he's looking for on the field. He's not looking for Deontay down the field.
I have to agree with Kayla. Despite a poor start offensively to the season, Mitch Trubisky deserves a fair chance as the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And coming into the situation, and so he came into a rough situation. Matt Canada, LSU didn't want him. Ed Orgeron publicly admitted he made a mistake. This is a college program. This is the NFL. And when we have players, Deontay, Claypool, Trubisky, all questioning the play calling in post-game press conferences, along with the only other starting quarterback to play in this system, and Ben Roethlisberger recently on his podcast making an interesting point, saying that Mitch doesn't deserve all this hate from the fans, saying that he's playing within the system. Mitch has gotten a lot of hate from fans saying the lack of aggressiveness, lack of deep shots. But at the end of the day, he's playing within the system. If they call a wide receiver screen, you have to throw the wide receiver screen. It doesn't matter how open George Pickens is downfield. That's where Mitch has to go. So at the end of the day, I believe Mitch Trubisky deserves a fair chance as the starting quarterback of the Steelers. And unfortunately, drafting the hometown hero in Kenny Pickett and coming into an offensive situation where the play calling is suspect to say the least, I really feel for Mitch, because at the end of the day, I don't feel like he's going to get that fair chance that he came to Pittsburgh looking for.
Yeah, for me, it comes down to I don't see the offensive coordinator being gone anytime soon. So I think you got to put Pickett in as soon as possible. I see you leave Trubisky in against the Browns. It's a really division rival game. Both teams want to, come back and win this game against each other. Two huge rivals. For me, I say you play Pickett against the Jets, a game that should be a little lighter. You put in Pickett and you see what he can do. The coordinator is going to do what he does. We know that's going to happen. So, you have 260 yards both games offensively, which is 30th in the NFL. That is not going to win you football games whatsoever. The defense looks pretty good, so you got to change that as soon as possible. I think you give Pickett the chance.
Yeah.
I think you have to wait till at least the Jets game, because he would only have about 1, maybe 2 practices this week before having to face a division rival away. That's a lot of pressure on a rookie quarterback, which can really hurt him in the long run, as well as the fact that our O-line is still weak, that you are really seriously risking injury for him, because he takes a lot of time to throw the ball. And there's a big difference between the players that are in the preseason games versus the regular season games.
Yeah.
Mike, what do you think?
Well, what I think is you have 2 weeks left to see what you have in Mitchell Trubisky. Okay, you got the Browns coming up, and you have the Jets. Okay, Steelers right now, they currently sit 1-1. AFC North is still up the grabs for anyone. No one has coming out looking strong besides arguably the Ravens. Everyone else is still up and down. You got Jacoby Brissett, Joe Burrow looks shell-shocked, and Lamar Jackson's playing his butt off out here. Now, again, with the Steelers offense, Matt Canada, not the greatest offensive coordinator. I think we can all say that. Makes Steeler fans want to go back to Todd Haley. That's saying something. Canada has also had issues with some of his staff. He let a few guys go last year, so obviously it's not going to look good on his resume. And when you talk about Mitchell Trubisky, it doesn't help his situation either with a terrible offensive line that the Steelers had. A lot of his throws, it's looking like he's throwing off his back foot, like he's not looking confident in the throws he needs to make. At the same time, though, it goes back to the coaching staff. It's a little leadway to both teams. Sometimes they scheme it up for him to make the short plays, and sometimes Mitchell Trubisky does not simply want to make the plays down the field that they need. Again, the Steelers are 17th in passing attempts per game. They're 30th in team yards per game. They're 28th in passing yards per game, and they're 31st in first downs per game. And I understand it's week 2, but there was problems stemming from last year with the offensive line and the first down errors. So what I believe, you got 2 weeks because you got the Browns and the Jets, and then after that, you got a tough strength of schedule before the bye. You got the Bills, the Bucks, the Dolphins, who are on fire, and the Eagles, who look really hot as well this year, right before the bye. So I give Mitch Trubisky 2 weeks. I understand Kenny Pickett's a rookie, but you got to see what you have in your first-round pick because you're simply wasting that defense.
I agree. I think they need to give Mitch a chance and not just jump to Kenny Pickett just because he's, like we were saying, the offensive coordinator. That's a problem in that field because last year Ben was having problems as well with that, and they kind of figured out that it's not the quarterback's fault.
One more thing. You guys were mentioning all those stats, the offensive stats. It's true. The offense has looked woeful, but you got to keep in mind who they have been going against. First week, right off the bat, reigning AFC champions. That defense had just a part of getting into the Super Bowl as the offense did. Without that turnover forced on Mahomes, the Bengals don't get there. So that's a tough defense right out of the gate. And then the next week followed up with Bill Belichick, the mastermind, one of the greatest head coach in NFL history. So you got to keep that in mind. But at the end of the day, what I want to pull one out of Aaron Rodgers' book, relax, but the play calling is really scary because the same problems that people were blaming on Ben, he won't go deep, his arm, these screens, lack of aggressiveness, we're seeing it. It's like we're watching the same offense, but with the same quarterback. So this but the thing is, Kenny might have the potential to break out of that, even though, I don't know. I feel like Mitch Trubisky these next 2 weeks, if the offense continues to struggle against the Browns and a first half against the Jets, if it's still struggling and they're in danger of going 0-2 against the Browns and the Jets, with murderers row on depth with the Bills, Bucks, Dolphins, and Eagles, who have all looked amazing so far, there's a chance if they go 0-2, I don't think they're winning any of those games. So by any means, they have to get a win against either the Browns or the Jets. They cannot afford to go 0-2 in this stretch because this upcoming schedule is just too tough.
Well, guys, we're going to have to see this Thursday how Trubisky does and next week's game against the Jets. Well, that is all that we have time for this week. I'm Natalia Hillen. We hope you are able to join us next week at the same Pioneer time, the same Pioneer channel, and the same Pioneer Sideline.